America's two great pastimes collide on this podcast. It is baseball and making money. From the dog days of summer through the October Classic, Greg Bases Peterson's going to be free swinging at the betting board as he tries to hit a grand slam for your bankroll. Now here is GP.
Happy Easter to one and all, and welcome in to the Azuñia Tequila Studios for MLB Overtime Betting. Greg Peterson joining you on this wonderful day, and what makes it even more wonderful is the fact that Danny Knobler, he does terrific work as a columnist for Bleacher Report. He also has a new book out, Unwritten, Bat Flips, The Fun Police, and Baseball's New Future. That is going to be coming up in the second segment. Going to chat with him about the Tim Anderson situation. Can also talk to him about pitchers and how a dip in velocity can affect them and how some of these pitchers are able to overcome them, which leads to some pitchers that we want to back and some pitchers that we don't want to back. So that's going to be very good. In the final segment, I give you a side and total on every game on the Las Vegas betting board as we touch them all. But first, you guys fired in a couple Twitter questions to me. I absolutely love it. Always happy to answer them. So let's get into them.
So you have questions, and Greg may or may not have any insight into them, but let's dive into the Twitter mailbag.
The first one was fired in by a gentleman that goes by the name of Oldham. He is on Twitter at Oldham2016. At June_D1, do you read anything into sharp money being on one team's money line and the other team's run line? I think that this is really interesting because I think that what we can find is that this might happen in a little bit of higher scoring games. A team like the Houston Astros might be a very good example of this because we notice that their run line prices are not all too different from their money line prices. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they're playing the Texas Rangers right now, which is another good example of those teams. But you'll notice a bigger divide between the money line and the run line whenever you get a lower scoring total, like the Pittsburgh Pirates versus the Giants game, for example. There was an insane run line on the Pittsburgh Pirates yesterday, plus 170, even though the money line, you were still laying probably about minus 125, minus 130, even up to minus 135 if you look at some places on the Pittsburgh Pirates. So I do think that there is a little bit more of a premium on one-run games when you get lower scoring games, and when you get higher scoring games, sometimes you'll see that run line price not be as big and it'll move a little bit more. So I do think that a lot of this has to do with how many runs are expected to score in that game. Hopefully I read into that question correctly. If I didn't, please let me know, but I think that I answered that correctly. I think that was the answer that you were looking for. Like I said, if not, please do let me know. We got another question. This was fired in from someone that goes by the name of Charlie Love. You can follow him on Twitter at Chaz A. Moore at June_D1. Are overs in a doubleheader a thing? Seems it would be. And yes, they were yesterday. That was for sure. If you saw the Baltimore Orioles and Minnesota Twins and the Cleveland Indians and the Atlanta Braves doubleheader, all four of those games went over. I do think that you have to look at more overs in doubleheaders just because you know that the bullpens are going to be taxed, and they're going to be taxed very heavily. If a game gets out of hand, a team might decide, you know what, we're going to put in a position player, which we saw actually quite a bit of last year in doubleheaders. So I do think that overs are certainly the way to go. We're going to get into that a little bit more when we recap all the games from yesterday, but I certainly think that overs certainly are a thing out there with doubleheaders, and you typically, whenever you're gauging totals in doubleheaders, you have to really gauge how far you think a starter is going to go, because you have to think that a manager going to want to ride their horse as long as possible, just because they know that the bullpen is going to be used and is going to be used heavily. So you want to look at the starting pitchers, and you probably want to take a look at the bullpens as well, because if you think a bullpen's going to be used very heavily in those two games, you're going to want to look over. From what I'm seeing, we had just the two questions yesterday, so now let's take a look back at yesterday as we had some pretty interesting games on the board.
What trends should you pay attention to? Well, Greg is going to tell you what he has on the black.
It all started with the New York Yankees being able to just completely dismantle the Kansas City Royals by a count of 9-2. This was really no surprise as the Kansas City Royals sent out their Heath Fillmyer. He got completely blasted. Goes 4 innings and he gave up 4 home runs and 6 total earned runs as the New York Yankees got home runs out of TJ LeMahieu, Clint Frazier, Aaron Judge, and Mark Tauchman. Now, the big takeaway from this game, though, is that Aaron Judge wound up getting injured. He's unlikely going to be in the lineup today, so that's something you want to note Good news is Masahiro Tanaka, very good start, 7 innings pitch, allowed the 1 dinger and 1 run in total, as hitting that home run was Whit Merrifield. Chris Owings was able to tack on a 9th inning home run for the Kansas City Royals, but all in all, the Yankees get a win, but they also pick up yet another injury, as another team out there in the city of New York is dealing with injuries, as Chris Flexen wound up having to make a start for the New York Mets. It went about as well as you'd think a Chris Flexen start would go. The St. Louis Cardinals completely dismantled the Mets by a count of 10-2. Flexen, 4.1 innings. He was flexing on his ERA, as it is now a 10.38. That's a good number if you're doing the bench press for 1 rep, but that's not a good ERA, as he allowed 6 runs, 5 of which were earned. Luis Avilan gives up 2 runs, and then you had some other guys like Sewald that gave up another run as well. The Mets bullpen looked absolutely awful, and for the St. Louis Cardinals, you have to be very encouraged by what you saw out of Miles Mikolas. Goes 8 innings, gives up 2 runs, both of which were earned. Very good bounce back, and with all the runs that the Cardinals scored, only 1 was on a dinger. That was it by Paul Goldschmidt. He was able to go yard in the 8th inning when the game was already out of hand, as it was just a whole bunch of guys getting RBIs. Miles Mikolas wound up getting a 2 RBI single in the 2nd inning. Jose Martinez had a trio of RBI. The team in general had 10 hits. It was a very good sign for the St. Louis Cardinals. Now the Mets are going to need a very good start out of Noah Syndergaard to stop the bleeding, because the Mets have lost 3 out of 4. The Arizona Diamondbacks were able to pick themselves up, and they got the get-right medicine to do so against the Chicago Cubs, winning this game 6-0. The wind was blowing inwards at like 15 to 20 miles an hour, and yet Yu Darvish still managed to give up 2 home runs, as the Arizona Diamondbacks were able to go yard 3 times. In the 1st inning, they were able to go yard twice, with Eduardo Escobar and David Peralta providing the power. And then in the 6th inning, they were able to get another dinger out of John Ryan Murphy, the backup catcher. So that was obviously a very good sign for them. The Chicago Cubs weren't able to get much generated off of Zach Greinke, who looked spectacular in this game. He goes 6 innings. He has 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. You can tell he doesn't necessarily have the plus stuff that he had a few years ago, but he certainly looks like he's adapting well. And then Taylor Clark was able to give the team 3 strong innings for a 3-inning save. You don't see those very often, so a very good bounce back for the Diamondbacks after they scored just 1 run on Friday. The Twins were able to win both games of their doubleheader against the Orioles. 6-5 was the final in the first one, as Jose Barrios had a little bit of a rough go of it to start out with. He wound up giving up 3 home runs, but he was able to make it 6 innings, giving up those 4 runs. And then for the Minnesota Twins in this one, the real difference maker was Eddie Rosario, who went deep twice. Those were his 7th and 8th home runs of the year, as Dan Straley had another rough outing. He goes 5 innings, but gives up 3 runs. And for the Baltimore Orioles, they were able to get a lot of guys that were able to generate some power. Renato Nunez had his 3rd home run of the year. Paul Severino was able to go deep for his 2nd home run of the year. Dwight Smith Jr. went deep for his 4th, so they were very close there. The second game with Alex Cobb on the mound was a very different story, as the Minnesota Twins had 13 runs in the 4th inning, and they won this game by a count of 16-7. I don't know if the Minnesota Vikings would score 16 points on the Baltimore Ravens at this point. It was a sad, sad sight to see, as the Minnesota Twins had everyone going yard in this one, as let's just read down the list. Nelson Cruz had 2 home runs, his 2nd and 3rd home runs of the year. Rosario once again goes deep. That was his 9th home run of the year. Jonathan Scope, 2 home runs of his own. And then a pair of dingers from Mitch Garver, his 4th and 5th home runs of the year. And it was just absolutely embarrassing for the Baltimore Orioles, as Alex Cobb goes 2.2 innings, gives up 9 runs. Not a good way to be treated off the disabled list, as things got so bad that Chris Davis pitched the 9th inning. That tells you all you need to know right there. If you're looking for a little bit of good news for this team, it's that Renato Nunez was able to go deep twice for his 4th and 5th home runs of the year in this game. And the Orioles, they had 7 runs. Problem is, they gave up 16. A problem with giving up runs was not the case for the Milwaukee Brewers, as they knock off the LA Dodgers by a count of 5-0. Very encouraging sign for this team, as Hyun-Jin Ryu got a little bit dinged up, 5.2 innings, gave up 2 runs, but it was Caleb Ferguson that really was the man who gave it up, as Ryan Braun was able to hit a 3-run homer in the 7th inning to make it a 5-0 game. Christian Yelich went yard twice in this game. He's got to be your front runner for MVP right now. Those were his 12th and 13th home runs of the year. He now has 31 RBI in 22 games. And Chase Anderson, who was essentially spot starting in this one, looked very good. He probably needs to stay in the rotation for the Milwaukee Brewers. There's good value with him. He was good last year. I have no idea why he wasn't in the rotation to start with. Goes 5 scoreless innings, and then you had Claudio Jr. Guerra and Matt Albers being able to close the door from there. The Brewers looked very good in this one, and the LA Dodgers only 2 hits in this one. Corey Seager and Jock Peterson were the only 2 to have those hits, so it was a very interesting day as the LA Dodgers, one of the best offenses out there in the big leagues, just not able to get the job done there. A team that was able to get the job done, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now note, the only bets in this game that counted were the money line bets because this game was called after 5 innings, so if you had a run line, if you had a total, anything like that, you got a refund on this game, but the Pirates were able to get a 3-1 win as the star in this one was Cole Tucker, who had his first career home run in the 5th inning. It was the difference in the game. James Santillan was able to go 5 innings, gave up 1 run. Derek Holland gave up those 3 runs. And for the San Francisco Giants, they don't have anyone in their lineup that's hitting above 250. It was also an encouraging sign for the Pittsburgh Pirates that Jung-Ho Kang went deep for another home run. That was his 3rd of the campaign. And for the San Francisco Giants, they don't have anyone in their starting lineup that's hitting above 250. Something you really got to note. You really got to be taking unders with the San Francisco Giants right now. But it looks like you have to take overs with the Toronto Blue Jays all of a sudden, who was able to get a 10-1 win over the Oakland A's. Now you want to note that Matt Shoemaker ended up having to leave this game because he injured his left knee while he was in a rundown chase. But Sam Gaviglio was able to give 4 innings of relief, did not give up a single hit in those 4 innings, so he looked absolutely sensational. And then for the Toronto Blue Jays, they got home runs from Justin Smoak, his 4th, and Brandon Drury went deep for his 2nd home run, and then Rowdy Tellez was able to tack on a dinger. That was his 4th. And for the Oakland A's, Mike Fiers, oh man, he is not doing a good job for this team. Pitches 3.1 innings, it gives up 6 runs. It got so bad that Kendrys Morales, who was on the Toronto Blue Jays last year, position player by the way, wound up having to pitch an inning. But the good news is, Fernando Rodney wound up pitching a scoreless inning as well. So if you're an Oakland A's fan, you have that to hang your hat on. If you're a Cleveland Indians fan, you're able to hang your hat on Game 1 of the doubleheader between them and the Atlanta Braves. They were able to win this game by a count of 8-4. Now, Corey Kluber doesn't look like his same self. You got to keep taking overs in his starts as he went 7 innings, but he wound up giving up 4 runs, including 2 home runs. For the Atlanta Braves, providing the power was Brian McCann. That was his first home run of the year. He is now healthy for the team, so obviously a good sign there. And then Matt Joyce was able to hit a dinger for his 2nd of the year, but it was Julio Teheran who, oh boy, he got into some bases loaded jams. He only made it 4.2 innings. He had 4 walks. He did have 6 strikeouts, but gave up 5 runs. And then Wesley Parsons gives up 2 runs of his own. The Atlanta Braves bullpen is one that you can't trust. Now, the Cleveland Indians bullpen lost some points with me as well. You're going to find out why in Game 2 of the doubleheader, but Max Moroff was able to provide a home run for the Cleveland Indians in this one. That was his first of the campaign, and that wound up being a solo shot as they were just tacking on so many runs and playing small ball in that 5th inning. That was a 5th inning in which they were able to get 5 runs in. And speaking of 5 runs, that's how many runs the Atlanta Braves got in the 9th inning of the 2nd game of the doubleheader. The Cleveland Indians were in the lead in this game by a count of 7-3 going into the 9th inning, and then they gas canned it. This is going to be one of the worst beats that you're going to find all year long. Trevor Bauer had a great start. 6.1 innings, 10 Ks, gives up 2 runs, but it was the undoing of Adam Clymer, who gives up 4 runs out of the bullpen. Oliver Perez gave up 1 run, and Daniel Otero also gave up a run a little bit earlier, but Clymer just completely gas-canned this game in the 9th inning. Very inexcusable. As for the Atlanta Braves, they got a home run out of Dansby Swanson in the 7th inning to really start the rally, but in the 9th inning, they just kept drawing walk after walk after walk. 7 walks is the amount that the Atlanta Braves had in the game. 5 were in that 9th inning. Just absolutely stunning right there. Massive collapse by the Cleveland Indians, and good on the Atlanta Braves for not giving up on that game. And speaking of teams that aren't giving up, how about the Boston Red Sox? They're able to win another game. They were able to knock off the Tampa Bay Rays by a count of 6-5. They were able to get most of the offense generated in the first 2 innings as Andrew Benintendi hit a grand slam in the 2nd inning, put the Boston Red Sox up by a count of 5-0. But then it was the Tampa Bay Rays that were able to claw their way all the way back and tied it up in the 8th inning. That was thanks to a Yandy Diaz home run. That is his 5th of the year. And then they also got a home run out of Avicio Garcia in the 2nd inning. That was his 4th dinger of the year. Charlie Morton got roughed up. you figured that he was going to come back to earth eventually. He's been a reliable starter the last 2 years, but in 6 innings pitch, wound up giving up 5 runs, had 9 strikeouts, but it was a bad time for Jose Alvarado to give up his first earned run of the year as Andrew Benintendi was able to hit a sac fly in the 9th inning. That was the difference in this one, and you have to be encouraged by what you saw out of Rick Porcello. He had been awful to begin the year, so awful that despite the fact that he went 5.2 innings and gave up just 2 runs on Saturday, his ERA is still an 8.47. Still kind of tough to trust this Boston Red Sox rotation, but all in all, a good showing there. And you got to continue to fade Max Scherzer. If you had a plus $2 or greater price on the Miami Marlins, you cash in grand fashion as they completely pulverized Washington Nationals by a count of 9-3. Max Scherzer goes 5.1 innings, gives up 11 hits, 7 runs, 6 of which were earned. He did have 9 strikeouts, but his ERA now 4.45. And then the bullpen from there for the Nationals, as they typically do, gave up 2 runs in about 3 innings of work. Jose Urena looked actually pretty good for the Marlins. I think he needs to come off the fade list because in 6 innings pitch, gives up 3 runs, only 2 of which were earned though. Didn't necessarily have great strikeout stuff, but from there, the Miami Marlins got 3 innings of relief out of their bullpen. They didn't give up a single run, so that was a good sign. And hey, Curtis Granderson came around with the bat. He had 2 hits in this game. He had been hitting below 150 coming in, and he hit a home run. It was his 3rd of the year as nearly everyone was hitting for the Miami Marlins. They were able to pound out 11 hits. You had just a bunch of guys being able to drive in runs, including Neil Walker. Starling Castro was able to drive in 2 runs as well, so a very good sign there for the Fish, and a very good sign for the Texas Rangers as they were able to get to Garrett Cole early and often. They win this game by a count of 9-4. If you were fading star pitchers on Saturday, you were making a lot of money as Garrett Cole goes 4.1 innings. It gives up 8 runs. 8 earned runs, I should say, as there was another run that he gave up that was unearned. Just a very bad game for the Houston Astros. Now, if you are looking for a little bit of an encouraging sign, they were able to get a home run out of Max Stassi. That is his first stinger of the year. He's only hitting .091. Anything to get him going is nice, and George Springer hit his 6th stinger of the year. But for the Texas Rangers, they got it from everyone. Joey Gallo was able to go deep. That was his 8th home run of the year. Danny Santana had 3 hits. He's a guy that is really providing something for the Rangers. He's now hitting .348. And hey, they even got 2 RBI out of Delino DeShields Jr., so very good signs there for the Texas Rangers, as if you had a plus $2 greater ticket there on the Texas Rangers, you were very happy. And it looks like the Philadelphia Phillies are getting back to their winning ways. They knock off the Colorado Rockies by a count of 8-5. Now, Aaron Nola, speaking of struggling stars, he didn't necessarily have the best outing. He wound up giving up 3 runs in 5.2 innings, but he did have 9 strikeouts, and they were able to get some, I guess you could call it okay bullpen pitching. Pat Neshek gave up 2 runs, but all in all, the Phillies were able to get the job done. And speaking of guys that got the job done, Andrew McCutchen went deep in the 9th inning for his 4th home run of the year. Bryce Harper had a home run in the 7th. That was his 5th of the campaign. And a big surprise for this team is the fact that they got 3 RBI out of Phil Gosselin at the shortstop spot. I don't think you were expecting that. That was essentially found money for the Philadelphia Phillies. Meanwhile, Antonio Senzatella, after having a great start a week ago, he wound up giving up 4 runs in 6 innings. He wasn't necessarily terrible. Brian Shaw wound up giving up a run in the bullpen, and then Mike Dunn really had his undoing. He gave up 2 runs without recording a single out. So the Rockies were a little bit shaky in the bullpen in this one. Speaking of teams that weren't shaky in the bullpen, though, the Cincinnati Reds, they were able to get a 4-2 win over the San Diego Padres as Luis Castillo continues to be magnificent. He had 9 strikeouts in 6 innings of work, gave up only 1 run, and then from there the bullpen went 3 innings, he gave up just 1 run. Jesse Winkler hit a dinger for his 6th home run of the year as the Cincinnati Reds only had 7 hits in this one, but they were able to make them count, and they were all scattered as a different player had every one of those hits. Meanwhile, for the San Diego Padres, they just weren't able to get a whole heck of a lot generated. Eric Hosmer hit a home run for his 2nd home run of the year. He's been doing a good job for this team, and Eric Lauer just continues to be sort of a shaky pitcher for the San Diego Padres. Gives up 3 runs in 5 innings, 2 of which were earned. He's just a guy that I really can't trust. And Matt Whistler out of the bullpen, he's been lowering his ERA recently, but I noticed that he's probably the weak link on that San Diego Padres bullpen. So if you're betting on them on Sunday, that's actually a little bit of a good sign. And once again, the Seattle Mariners continue to win, and they continue to hit the deep ball. 6-5 was their final against the LA Angels as In this one, significant to some, Albert Pujols hit a home run because I was on the Seattle Mariners run line. That was his third of the year, and that actually passed him for Babe Ruth on the all-time RBIs list. So a good moment for the LA Angels, but they did not have good pitching from Trevor Cahill in this one. In 4.1 innings, gives up 5 runs, all of which were earned, 3 of which were home runs, and providing the power of Edwin Encarnacion, his 6th of the year. Domingo Santana goes deep for his 5th, and Mitch Haniger had a deep ball for his 6th of the year, and Daniel Vogelbach also chipped in a home run for his 8th of the campaign. Yusei Kikuchi, he didn't necessarily look great in this outing. He wound up going 5 innings, gave up 4 runs, all of which were earned, but he was able to get the job done as the bullpen allowed just 1 run in 4 innings for the Seattle Mariners. Very good sign for this team as they just continue to roll. They're now 15-8. I would say the most profitable team in baseball as well if you take a look at all those metrics and everything like that as well. The big takeaway from Saturday has to be the fact that just 3 games went under, and you got to be continuing to fade aces, and you've got to put a little bit more stock into these middle of the row guys, because guys like Chris Flexen, Heath Fillmyer and company, you can't trust them, but guys like Garrett Cole, Max Scherzer and company, they're not necessarily getting the job done either. Even though Corey Kluber and Aaron Nola both won their starts, they didn't necessarily look sharp either. So lots of value on plus prices whenever you're able to get those middle-of-the-road pitchers. And now we've got to take a look at some pitchers that you might want to look to fade, some pitchers that you might want to look to back, and how sometimes the history of some of these baseball teams can play out with fights and everything like that, as Danny Knobler, author and Bleacher Report columnist, is going to be joining me next right here on MLB Overtime Betting.
Greg is going to the bullpen as he makes a call to the Azuña hotline.
And we're back here on MLB Overtime Betting. Greg Peterson broadcasting from the Azuña Tequila Studios out here in beautiful Las Vegas. Great pleasure to be joined by our next guest. You can follow him on Twitter at Danny Knobler, and Knobler is spelled with a K at the front of it, so that is Knobler on the last name, and it is Danny Knobler joining me. He authored the new book, Bat Blitz, The Fun Police, and Baseball's New Futures. He's got a couple books out right now, and he is joining me right now. And Danny, how are you doing on this fine day?
Very good, Greg. Good to talk to you.
Great to have you on, and it's very appropriate that you're joining us today because I still remember a couple days ago the whole Tim Anderson situation with the Chicago White Sox against the Kansas City Royals. I'm sure that you've had to talk about this a couple times with your new book out. What was your takeaway from that? Because obviously Tim Anderson hits that home run, very demonstrative in that, and then of course next time he goes to the plate, he winds up getting hit. It causes a big scrum. There's a bunch of players ejected, and in all honesty, affects the whole outlook of the game.
Well, and Tim Anderson ended up with a 1-game suspension, apparently for using a charged word in the altercation after he was hit by a pitch. But still, he ends up with a suspension. And people wonder about it, and it calls, as you said, calls into question again why baseball has these unwritten rules and why anybody would enforce them, and why a player especially would be allowed to decide something is outside the bounds of what should be allowed. And my answer to that would be, and I'm not going to necessarily defend anyone in this except maybe Tim Anderson's original action and flipping the bat, because I didn't see anything wrong with that. But the way baseball operates, and I really do think it's the best way, even though I see the faults in it, is that the players themselves, to a large extent, determine what is acceptable and what isn't. And then on the field, they believe they take care of it. And I know a lot of people think that's old fashioned and shouldn't happen anymore. But realistically, I don't believe there's a way you just say, we're going to eliminate that from the game. What happens is these things change over time. And what Tim Anderson did, well, obviously the Kansas City Royals didn't approve of it at the time. And there's a few others who have said that they didn't, players from other teams. But largely, there's been, out of the fan base and even out of the baseball population, a belief that he didn't do anything wrong. And I think that's how the unwritten rules of the game have changed and how the game has adapted. Because I think if you went 10 years ago, there would be a much more of a belief that he was in the wrong rather than the Royals. And that has changed.
It certainly has, as Danny Knobler joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And I think that it's just such a interesting part of the game. And I know you did a lot of research in regards to this. And how far back do you feel like some of these players have history? Because I've heard of times where a guy got hit for something they did like 2 or 3 years ago. And I find that so interesting because whenever you're taking a look at some of these games and something like that, it can just throw you off guard when a guy gets plunked in the back for something that happened like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, well, especially sometimes when it happens when players were with different teams. I remember one time when I was covering the Detroit Tigers, and Bip Roberts had signed with the Tigers. It was his first spring training with the Tigers, and they were playing, I believe, against the Royals in a spring training game in Florida, back when the Royals trained in Florida. And in a spring training game, somebody threw at him. And it was for an incident that had happened between 2 different teams the previous year. You're right. It took everybody by surprise. And then you go and you find there was history. And as far as things going on, there was the famous one a couple years ago, Hunter Strickland, who was then with the Giants, throwing at Bryce Harper for something that had happened a couple of years before in a playoff game. And they hadn't met since. And Strickland had a long memory. Baseball players do have long memories. And if they feel they were offended, then things can happen later. One of the most famous incidents in recent years, Jose Bautista and the Texas Rangers. There was a playoff home run, a huge playoff home run that Bautista hit, a big memorable bat flip. The Rangers took offense to it. And in the final regular season game, the 2 teams played against each other the following year. Bautista got hit by a pitch. Then he went into second base hard on a slide. And famously, Rougned Odor, playing for the Rangers, got up and slugged him in the face. It went back several months. And if you were watching that game and you didn't see anything before, you just happened as a fan, let's say from another country, that came to watch that game and didn't know what happened in the playoffs, you're going, what in the world is happening here?
I still remember that punch in the face, too. That was a solid punch. I will say that's one of those things that's just absolutely crazy about baseball. And something else that's crazy is some of the things that we've seen the first 3.5 weeks of the season. We just went through some of the incidents that have actually happened. But as far as on the field, what have been some of your biggest surprises? Because what stands out to me isn't necessarily some of the teams that have gotten off to fast starts. Obviously, the Seattle Mariners are a great story, so are the Tampa Bay Rays. But how about how bad the Boston Red Sox have been? This is just absolutely stunning.
Yeah, you don't expect that with the talent they have on that team, and especially with the talent they have in that starting rotation. I think people would have looked at it, and the Red Sox made some moves over the winter, and they had to because of the way their payroll is constructed, and they didn't bring back Craig Kimbrell. They didn't bring back Joe Kelly. People wondered whether their bullpen was going to be good enough. But other than that, the team is basically the same team that won the World Series last year. And not only won the World Series, won a near record number of games in the regular season and really stormed through the playoffs. You wonder how in a few months things could go this bad. And you're also reminded it's the middle of April. Teams have bad 2-3 week spans at some point during the season. You wonder if this is just their bad span. Because if you look at any championship team over the last several years, they're going to have a 10, 15 game span where they just don't play very well. And that happens. When it happens at the start of the year, you wonder about it. And you certainly wonder, there's reasons with the Red Sox for some of the players that you wonder. Obviously with Chris Sale, he had 2 times last year. He went on the disabled list. They said it wasn't any big deal. He came back and pitched in the postseason, but his velocity had been down. You wonder, is he okay? And he says he is, but he's just not pitching well. But boy, when you go through a few starts like that and there's a little bit of history, you start wondering about it.
Oh, I am totally right there with you. Chris Sale has seen a dip in velocity. And have you noticed any other pitchers that have really seen a little bit of a dip in velocity? Because something that I noticed is that if a guy loses like 2 or 3 miles per hour on that fastball, that can be all the difference in the world. It's why we've seen Chris Sale get off to a little bit of a slow start. I think that Zach Greinke is really one of those guys that I'm noticing a little bit of a dip in his velocity as well. Has there been any other pitchers that have really stood out to you that might be losing a little bit on their fastball and it could be affecting them?
Yeah, those are two interesting ones. The thing you don't know, though, about it, because it isn't unusual for some pitchers for their velocity to be lower in April than it's going to be later in the year. I know even with somebody like Aroldis Chapman, who throws as hard as anybody, it's not uncommon for his velocity to go up during the season. Even though, yes, it's there, yes, it's notable, we don't have enough evidence yet to know that it's permanent. With Greinke, he's getting to the age you expect some drop in velocity. Now, one of the things people have long thought about Zach Greinke is because of the way he pitches, how he is willing to use a lot of pitches. He's never been a guy who just depends on velocity. People thought he was going to be able to adapt to it better. Whether that's going to be the case, we're not sure. And you're right that even a couple of miles an hour can make a difference because it's not just the fastball. If they're not worried about that fastball, if the fastball is normally 95 and now it's 93 or 92, if they're not as worried about it, then the other pitches aren't as effective. It's definitely something to watch, but I caution on making big judgments this early in the season and saying that things are just that way and not going to change.
Absolutely. We've got Danny Knobler joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting, doing a terrific job as both an author, and he does some articles with Bleacher Report as well, and he's joining me right now. And Danny, I know that you were talking about this a little bit, but what pitchers do you think are best to be able to deal with a dip in velocity? Because we're noticing a couple older pitchers out there. Justin Verlander, he doesn't quite have the fastball that he once did, but he's still been highly effective for the Houston Astros. CC Sabathia, at his advanced age, he's been very good. It's not like Kyle Hendricks was ever a flamethrower or anything like that, but I remember watching him on Friday against the Arizona Diamondbacks. He had a double-digit amount of strikeouts, even though he wasn't hitting 90 on the radar gun. What allows some of these guys that don't necessarily have that velocity to be able to keep batters off balance?
Well, there's two parts of that, Greg. One is, you're right. I think pitchers that understand who they are and realize that they can get guys out other ways. I mean, one guy who it's interesting, and he had a good first start. We'll see how it goes for him, but his velocity hasn't been what it used to be, is Clayton Kershaw. And I remember he did an interview with Ken Rosenthal of Fox Sports during the playoffs last year where he said he believed his velocity would come back. And I really worried in a way about when I heard that interview, because I think some pitchers, when they focus too much on thinking the velocity is going to come back and on finding ways to get the velocity to come back, I think sometimes they end up becoming less effective in working with what they have on a given day. Now, I understand that they would like to have the velocity can't come back. Justin Verlander, there were several years where his velocity was a little bit lower. His health, he had some issues, not big arm issues, but he had some core body issues that he wasn't throwing as hard. But Verlander learned at a point in his career that he didn't need 98, 99, 100 to be successful. And I think pitchers who learn that the best, CC Sabathia has certainly learned that. He had to. He wouldn't still be pitching if he hadn't learned that. And when you mentioned Kyle Hendricks has had to be that way because he doesn't throw as hard as some of the other pitchers. But one thing now, a guy who has great command and movement and doesn't throw as hard can be in some ways more effective now than ever, because hitters are geared up to see 95 every night because so many guys throw hard now. I know Jason Vargas has had a tough time the last couple of years with the Mets, but in his last year with the Royals, he had great success. And one of the reasons a lot of people believed he had success was he was doing something different from what the pitchers that the hitters are seeing every other night. And Kyle Hendricks does something different from the pitchers those hitters are seeing the night before and the 2 nights before and the night after. So when he comes in there, if his command is good and his movement is good and he mixes up his pitches well, his secondary pitches are good, he can be very, very effective and he can strike guys out. I remember back, that's something out of the ordinary. I remember back to Frank Tanana. Frank Tanana, early in his career, when he was teaming with Nolan Ryan with the then California Angels, he threw really hard. He had some arm injuries. Later in his career, he didn't throw nearly as hard. But when I first started covering the Tigers, Frank Tanana was still there. He's still pitching. And he was older. He didn't throw that hard. But it was one of the greatest things to watch when he would jam a guy with an 88-mile-an-hour fastball. We didn't have, at that time, the velocities on the screen all the time, but you could see it. He would set it up so well. And if you get a guy looking for a breaking ball outside and you throw a fastball on the hands and you spot it well and it's 88 miles an hour when he's been seeing 75, that change of velocity is just as effective. Now, obviously, you have less time to react if a guy's throwing the ball harder. But if it's spotted right and if you mix it up right and you put it in the right sequence after something softer, it looks very hard to a hitter and it's really hard to hit.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you, as we do have Danny Knobler right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And we were talking about pitchers, some of which have seen a dip in velocity, some of which are effective. Who are some pitchers that you look at going forward this season that you think are going to be able to have some very good success? Because you mentioned just the change of velocity in general being something that's big for these guys. I noticed that a couple pitchers that have really been doing a good job so far this year, Carlos Rodon with the Chicago White Sox, I feel like he could be a guy that could really bust out. Chris Paddock with the San Diego Padres has been doing a very good job so far this year. Herman Marquez has been terrific with the Colorado Rockies. Or a couple other guys that stand out to you.
Yeah, those are good names. I still like he had his breakout year last year, but I like watching Aaron Nola of the Phillies. He put himself right into a Cy Young race last year that seemed to totally belong to Scherzer and DeGrom. I watched him pitch on opening day this year for the Phillies. When he's on a roll, he can be very, very impressive. Zach Wheeler with the Mets can be really impressive at times. There are enough pitchers out there who are good, and you look at what the Tampa Bay Rays are doing, and obviously Blake Snell last year had a spectacular year, but they're young pitchers, and everyone talked about using the opener last year. Tyler Kepner of the New York Times wrote a really nice column last week about how the team that used the opener now has one of the best rotations in the game, and they're using starting pitchers for the most part in a more normal way, which is really what they intended to do more last year and weren't as able to because of injuries right from the start and because the result was they had a very young rotation.
And the Rays off to a very good start so far this year. And Danny, I would like to close it up with this. I know you're doing great work as an author. I know that you put out some articles time to time with Bleacher Report as well. Let the good people know where they can find your book and where they can find you on social media as well.
Well, yeah, they can find the book anywhere. It should be in bookstores all over the country. You can find it on Amazon.com. You can find it on BarnesandNoble.com. If you don't see it anywhere, you can reach out to me through my websites, either on Facebook, Danny Knobler, author on Facebook, Knobler, or on Twitter at Danny Knobler, KNOBLER. Send me a message if you can't find the book, and I'll find a way to get one to you.
Fantastic. A big thanks to Danny Knobler for joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And coming up next, I give you a side and total on every game on today's betting board as we touch them all.
Hey, I'm Steve Heitner, the guy who uttered the famous phrase, "That's gold." And that's the inspiration of my new podcast, That's Gold with Steve Heitner. We talk sports, sports betting, movies, comedy, food, drink, Vegas, music, movies, and more. 5 days a week. Did I say movies twice? Look, guys love it, whether they're hip or worried about breaking a hip. Find us on Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify and Stitcher. That's Gold with me, Steve Heitner.
Welcome back to MLB Overtime. Greg is throwing a gem, so yeah, he better not blow it.
And a special thanks to Dan Knobler for joining me in the last segment. as we are back here in the Zuniga Tequila Studios for MLB Overtime Betting. And now on this Easter Sunday, it's time for me to give you some gifts with a side and total on every game on the betting board. And hopefully we don't have too many rotten eggs as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Note that any changes that are made to these plays are going to be noted on my Twitter page at unit_81. Some of these plays all locked in, good to go. Some of these plays going to be in wait and see mode, and we're going to be starting in Las Vegas rotation order with 901, 902. The Washington Nationals are in Miami to face off against the Marlins. Trevor Richards on the bump for the Marlins. Steven Strasburg goes on the hill for the Nationals. Total in this game is anywhere between 7 and 7.5. If you like the 7, the over is minus 120. The under is even. If you like 7.5, under is anywhere between minus 115 and minus 120. Over anywhere between minus 105 and even juice. If you want to take a shot on the fish, you're going to get anywhere between plus 155 and plus 160. Want to lay with the Nationals? Anywhere between minus 170 and minus 180. I continue to say it. I think that Steven Strasburg is a badly overrated starter. Trevor Richards has not necessarily been lights out so far this year. He's had a little bit of an issue with the walks, but I do think that there is good value here on the Marlins. We are going to be taking the fish once again. You take a look at Trevor Richards. He actually, right now, has a better ERA than Steven Strasburg. Strasburg comes into this game 1-1 with a 5.56 ERA, whip of 1.28. Trevor Richards, 0-2, 3.57 ERA, 1.24 whip, and the advantage that Trevor Richards has, his bullpen is actually better than the Washington Nationals. The Nationals enter in this game with the worst bullpen ERA in the bigs. They've just got so many gas cans out there, and Richards obviously needs to limit the walks. In 22.2 innings so far this year, 14 walks, that's not going to cut it, but opponents are hitting just 175 off of them, and we've noticed with the Washington Nationals, they've got a couple bats that are doing a terrific job. Going into Saturday, Anthony Rendon, one of the best hitters out there in the bigs, hitting 377, 6 home runs, 18 RBI. He has been terrific. But then you take a look at some of the other guys. Juan Soto has been providing some power, but he hasn't necessarily been hitting for average. At the top of the lineup, Adam Eaton has been doing a good job of being able to get on base. He's currently hitting right around 300, and Howie Kendrick, ever since he's gotten back into the lineup, has been great. But Brian Dozier, despite the fact that he's had a couple long balls, hitting below 200. Ryan Zimmerman, we got the day off yesterday. He has been awful. Matt Adams barely hitting above 2 bills himself. So there's just a lot of things that are going wrong, though I will say Victor Robles at the bottom of the lineup has actually been a nice find. He was able to get a pair of hits yesterday. And then taking a look at the Marlins, seems like things are starting to come around for the bats. Miguel Rojas hitting right around 200. Martin Prado hitting just below 400. Brett Anderson getting the job done with the bat. He was able to have an RBI double yesterday. That was big for this team. Neil Walker just hitting above 2 bills. Curtis Granderson has really been struggling, but getting back Jose Alfaro at the catcher spot is big, and I do think that the Miami Marlins are going to be able to generate some offense. They're going to be able to get to Steven Strasburg, who, like I said, I just continue to think is badly overrated, and he's backed up by a really bad bullpen. So for that reason, I am going to be taking a look at the Miami Marlins, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total over. I've locked in the 7.5 at even juice. I just feel like laying minus 120 with over 7, just a little bit too much to pay, so already locked that in. Currently in wait-and-see mode on the Marlins, trying to see if the Nationals get steamed up once again, because I noticed that happened yesterday as well. We move on to 903, 904 on the betting rotation. The San Francisco Giants are in Pittsburgh to face off against the Pirates. Yarg! Chris Archer on the bump for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Derek Rodriguez on the hill for the San Francisco Giants. The total on this game is 7, and it is shaded over. Over is minus 120. The under is even. If you want to take a shot here on the Giants, you're getting anywhere between plus 145 and plus 147. Want to lay it with the Buccos? You're going to be laying anywhere between minus 154 and minus 160. This is a spot where I've got to take a look at the Giants currently in wait-and-see mode, because I know that Chris Archer gets a lot of betting attention, but I'm not crazy about Chris Archer. He has been good so far this year. He is 1-0 with a 2 ERA. His problem is he just racks up his pitch count a little bit too much, and that leads to a Pittsburgh Pirates bullpen that has been decent, but gives up 1.56 home runs per 9 innings, coming in and having to do the job. And we notice that the Pirates also very, very banged up in the lineup. You've got Adam Frazier, who's currently day-to-day. Eric Gonzalez is not just on the 10-day injured list, he's on the 60-day injured list after he collided with Sterling Marte, who's on the 10-day injured list. Lonnie Chisenhall is still injured. I mean, the list of injuries for the Pirates goes on and on and on. Meanwhile, with the San Francisco Giants, I actually do like what Derek Rodriguez is doing. He has 4 walks so far this year in 22.2 innings. Not a guy that's necessarily going to light up the radar gun, but he's not bad at being able to get swings and misses as well. He's got a 3.63 ERA, whip of 1.07. And with Chris Archer, he sometimes dishes out a couple too many free passes. He's given out 7 walks in 18 innings so far this year. Not necessarily awful, but not great for an ace. And then when you take a look at the San Francisco Giants, let's face it, their lineup is not very good. And I think that's putting it very politely. In their game yesterday, they had nobody in the lineup that was hitting above 250. Steven Duger was their top hitter at 244, so things not going well. Kevin Pillar hitting below 200. Joe Panik hitting below 200. Buster Posey, 210. Gerardo Parra barely above 2 bills. Brandon Belt and Evan Longoria, neither of these guys are above 225. It's just not going very well, but they do have a little bit of power. Buster Posey's able to hit a couple long balls, same with Brandon Belt. You got to think at some point Evan Longoria and Brandon Crawford are going to start to hit. And with the Pittsburgh Pirates, you've got so many unknowns. They were able to get a home run out of Tucker yesterday, which was obviously very nice, but they've also got some struggling bats. Reyes at the second base spot hitting below 200. Jung Ho Kang and Francisco Cervelli both hitting below 175. Josh Bell has been able to hit 300. He's been able to generate some long balls, but what are you going to get out of J.B. Shuck? This is a spot where I've definitely got to take the under. Both these bullpens are pretty good, but the Giants have actually the best bullpen ERA out there in the big leagues to support who I think is a better starter in this one in Derek Rodriguez. Currently wait-and-see mode on the Giants price, but have already locked in this total under at even juice. Game 905, 906 on the betting rotation. We've got the LA Dodgers in Milwaukee to face off against the Brewers. Clayton Kershaw toes the rubber for the Dodgers. Brandon Woodruff on the bump for the Milwaukee Brewers. Total in this game is 8.5 and it is shaded over. Over is minus 120. The under is even. If you want the Dodgers in this spot, you're going to be laying anywhere between minus 132 and minus 135. If you like the Brewers, you're going to get a plus price anywhere between plus 122 and plus 125. Is it just me, or is this unbelievably cheap for Clayton Kershaw against Brandon Woodruff, no less? Brandon Woodruff, not a terrible starter by any stretch of the imagination, but man, you're giving me Clayton Kershaw here at minus 135. I might just look at the run line in this spot. Currently, I'm seeing a run line price of the Dodgers at plus 120. Currently, wait and see mode there, trying to see if I can get a little bit more value, but man, the fact that Clayton Kershaw is this cheap is absolutely stunning. And in his first start, he looked pretty good for dealing with the injuries that he did to only give up 2 runs in 7 innings of work on Monday against the Cincinnati Reds. Very encouraging. You can tell that the velocity on his fastball isn't quite there, but he's also being backed up by an incredibly good lineup. Going into Saturday, Cody Bellinger hitting .423, 10 home runs, 25 RBI. He has been absolutely sensational. We all know that Justin Turner is able to really rake. You've got guys like Max Muncy. Verdugo has been such a good find for this team so far this year. You got to think that at some point Chris Taylor is really going to start to swing the bat. Doc Peterson at the top of the lineup, who's been struggling in regards to average, but has been hitting the ball at the ballpark. David Freese has been picking it up ever since a slow start to the year. You got to think that Austin Barnes is going to be able to find it as well on days that Gale is not behind the dish. Meanwhile, with the Milwaukee Brewers, you've got an outfield that does a great job of being able to hit. Lorenzo Cain and Christian Yelich, we all know what they can do. Christian Yelich entered into Saturday with 11 home runs, 29 RBI. He's been absolutely sensational, but Jesus Aguilar, Ryan Braun, Pena, all guys that really need to pick it up with the bats. Orlando Arcia hitting .219. The 3 guys I mentioned before, all hitting below 200. Mike Moustakas has been picking it up a little bit, but he got off to a little bit of a slow start as well. And if they do wind up giving Ben Gamble a start, he hasn't necessarily been lighting the world on fire with his bat as well. I think that this plays out very well for the Dodgers to be able to win on the run line. Brandon Woodruff has been doing a good job as a starter with a 2-1 record, but I feel like that record is a little bit deceiving. He currently has a 5.23 ERA. He's gotten 26 strikeouts in 20.5 innings in 20 2/3 innings, so he's been great there, but opponents hitting .280 off of him. He just lends himself to a little bit too much hard contact, and I just don't think that he's going to be able to give a very long and sustained start, and it's going to tax a Milwaukee bullpen that is still good, but isn't quite what it was last year due to injuries. So for that reason, going to be taking a look at the Dodgers run line, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total under. Already locked in the under in wait-and-see mode currently as to what price I'm going to be able to get on the Dodgers money line and or run line. 907, 908 on the betting rotation. It is the New York Mets in St. Louis to face off against the Cardinals. Dakota Hudson On the bump for the Cardinals, Noah Thor Syndergaard goes for the Mets. Total on this game is 8.5, and it is shaded over. Over anywhere between -115 and -120. Under anywhere between even juice and -105 if you like the New York Mets. Going to be laying anywhere between -120 and -125. If you like the Cardinals, you're going to get anywhere between +110 and +115. I just came back to Dakota Hudson in this spot. I've been fading the Mets quite a bit, and it's not necessarily because I hate the Mets or anything like that. I do have a lot of disdain for their bullpen. It's why I faded them yesterday with Chris Flexen going. You knew that they were going to dig into the bullpen, and we all saw what happened there. Noah Syndergaard has actually been off to a little bit of a rough start so far this year. He is 1-1, but his ERA currently at 4.63. I do think that he's going to be able to pick things up. He's already looked a little bit better in his more recent starts, and he's still got great swing and miss stuff. 29 strikeouts in 24 innings. Sometimes lends himself to a little bit of hard contact, but does a good job of being able to limit the walks. 5 walks in 24 innings. That's something that you like to see, and I do think that he's going to be able to do a good job of keeping the St. Louis Cardinals bats off guard. Paul Goldschmidt is starting to pick it up with the bat. He's now hitting .235, 8 home run, 13 RBI. Marcell Ozuna also has 8 dingers on the year. Paul DeJong hitting .329. But then you've got a couple other guys for the St. Louis Cardinals that really haven't gotten it going. Now, I will say that on Saturday, they had everyone going as they were able to win that game 10-2. Thank you, Chris Flexen, for that. They should be sending him a very nice fruit basket, but even Matt Carpenter at the top of the lineup hitting .224. Jose Martinez has really started to pick it up. He got 3 hits in that game, but before then he was struggling along with Yadier Molina. Dexter Fowler is picking it up as well, but Colton Wong, ever since the beginning of the year, has really plummeted back to earth a little bit more. And then with the New York Mets, you gotta like what you're getting from just about everyone in the lineup. Pete Alonso hitting above 300. He's been hitting a bunch of home runs. Robinson Cano seems to be coming around the bat. Michael Conforto and Wilson Ramos hitting nearly 300. Jeff McNeil hitting 388. These are all guys that do a great job of being able to get contact. And then with Dakota Hudson, he's right now 0-1 with a 6.08 ERA, but what really stands out to me with him is that he doesn't necessarily do a bad job of being hit hard. He just gives out way too many free passes. In 3 starts and 4 total appearances this year, 10 walks in 13.1 innings, and opponents are hitting .350 off of him. He actually limits the home runs and everything like that, but he just lends himself to a lot of contact, and he walks a lot of guys. That's just not a good combination right there, and I think that Noah Syndergaard going to be able to give a very good start in this spot. Currently waiting to see mode as to what kind of juice I'm going to get on the under, because I feel like this is something that's going to be steamed to maybe a 9, and I'm going to be actually on the Mets run line. I just have absolutely no faith in Dakota Hudson whatsoever, and I'm really thinking that Syndergaard is going to be able to go out there and give the Mets 7 strong. Currently in wait and see mode on that run line. Currently I'm seeing plus 135, but with the way that the money line is, I have a feeling that this will probably get up to at least 140, if not 145 in a couple shops. So in wait and see mode on these, but going to be on the Mets run line and the under in this game. Game 909, 910 on the betting rotation. We've got the Arizona Diamondbacks in Chicago to face off against the Cubbies. Robbie Ray goes on the bump for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Tyler Chatwood for the Chicago Cubs. Currently, I am seeing across the board minus 105 on both sides. I think I'm seeing in one shop the Arizona Diamondbacks, a slight minus 107 favorite with the Cubs, minus 103. But you're essentially looking at a pick'em game because this game is in Wrigley Field and we don't know what the wind is going to be. Currently off the board in regards to a total, but I can tell you right now, even if the wind is blowing at like 100 miles an hour inward, I'm probably going to be taking this total over. Robbie Ray, not necessarily a good pitcher, and then you've got Tyler Chatwood on the mound. Are you kidding me? You've got such a waste of money in Tyler Chatwood taking the bump for the Cubs. You guys think Yu Darvish is bad. Tyler Chatwood, just absolutely awful. It was supposed to be Jose Quintana in this start, but I know that they had to move around a couple things, and Tyler Chatwood for his career just has absolutely no command whatsoever. And then with Robbie Ray, he's not a whole heck of a lot better. Ray is 0-1 so far this year with a 4.64 ERA, but he certainly has a issue with the walks. He does a great job of actually being able to get strikeouts. He's got 26 strikeouts in 21.1 innings, but 15 walks. Yeah, when the wind is blowing in, walks are a hitter's best friend because that gives them free chances to be able to get on base, and then it just takes one big hit in order to be able to drive in a bunch of runs. So I do think that that's interesting, and with both these lineups, we've seen that they've been able to hit. We saw the Cubs be able to erupt for 5 runs on Friday, and then the Diamondbacks were able to win 6-0 yesterday. And with the Cubs, Anthony Rizzo is still struggling a little bit. He is hitting below 200 for the year, but it feels like Chris Bryant has really been doing a better job up there at the plate. He went 1 for 3 yesterday, but you can just tell tell that he's driving guys into long pitch counts, which you gotta like to see. Javi Baez has still been hitting for this team. He's hitting .289, 6 home runs, 16 RBI. Jason Hayward hitting above .300 along with Daniel Descalso, so that has been very good for this team. And then with the Arizona Diamondbacks, you've got a bunch of guys that are raking. Christian Walker, 6 home runs, 11 RBI. He's hitting above .350. Ketel Marte has been able to generate 15 RBI himself. David Peralta doing a great job of being able to give this team a good average. He hasn't necessarily had the power that he's had in past years, but when you're hitting .352, you know what? You're going to take it. Gerard Dyson at the top of the lineup has been doing a good job of being able to get on base. Adam Jones is hitting nearly .300, so you've got a lot of great hitters. And with Tyler Chatwood being on the mound, this is just going to be a straight fade of him. I'm going to try to see if I can get a run line price here on the Arizona Diamondbacks. If they're the favorite, I'm probably going to be able to get a very hefty one. If they're not the favorite, I'm probably going to go to the Westgate and just look at an alternative run line. I'm just fading Tyler Chatwood here. He's just a guy that you can't back. The Chicago Cubs had to use quite a bit of their bullpen yesterday because Yu Darvish gave them a piece of garbage start, so you got to think that those arms are going to be tired, and I think that the Arizona Diamondbacks are going to be able to hit Tyler Chatwood and that bullpen. I think they're going to hit him hard. So likely going to be on and over when the total comes out, and likely going to be on the Arizona Diamondbacks run line. Obviously, wait and see mode on both of those as of right now, seeing as the run line is off the board and there's no total up on the board. We move on to 9-11, 9-12 on the betting rotation. It is the Colorado Rockies playing host to the Philadelphia Phillies. Jared Eichhoff goes for the Philadelphia Phillies. John Gray on the bump for the Rockies. If you like the Rockies, you're going to be laying anywhere between -133 and -135. Want to take a shot on the Phillies? Anywhere between +123 and 125. Total in this game is 10.5, and it is shaded a little bit to the over. Over is anywhere between -110 and -115. The under is anywhere between -110 and -105. And I feel like Jared Eichhoff is getting a little bit of a bad rap here. I actually really like him as a pitcher. I've already locked in the under in this spot. I think that John Gray is going to be able to give a quality outing, but we've seen Jared Eichhoff in long relief so far this year, and he's actually been pretty good. He was a little bit of a failed experiment when he was in the rotation in 2017. Opponents were able to hit .281 off of him, but you take a look at what he's done so far this year. He made one appearance for 4 innings, and he had 6 strikeouts. Opponents hit only .200 off of him. He looked very, very good there. And even in 2018, he seemed to be riddled a little bit by injury and everything like that, but he was able to do a good job of being able to generate strikeouts there. Obviously, it was a very small sample size as he was only in on 3 games, that he only made 1 start, but I do think that Jared Eichhoff going to be able to deliver a quality start here for the Philadelphia Phillies. We all remember he had a lot of potential several years ago when he joined that organization. Meanwhile, John Gray has been a little bit of a tough luck loser so far this year. He's 1-3, but the record is not indicative of how well he's pitched. He has 25 strikeouts to 9 walks. That's pretty good in 26.1 innings. He lends himself maybe to a little bit too much hard contact from time to time. Obviously, not the best thing out there in Colorado, but we've noticed that the Phillies have been doing a tremendous job of leaving men on base. I believe they left 18 on base in their game on Friday, in which they lost 4-3 to the Colorado Rockies, and you know that the Phillies are making some very good solid contact in that game. Bryce Harper was 5 of 7. He was absolutely terrific. Andrew McCutchen has come in and he's been able to get on base. His on-base percentage right around 400 at the top of the lineup. Sean Kingery enters into Saturday hitting nearly 400. He's been seeing more and more playing time, and rightfully so. They also now have back in the lineup their main center fielder, Roman Quinn. He's only hitting 111, but you got to think that he's going to be able to get it back into the fold. Mikel Franco has been doing a great job of being able to get on base, and he's a guy that's also able to generate some power at the bottom of the lineup. 6 home runs and 18 RBI going into Saturday. And then you take a look at the Colorado Rockies. They certainly have righted the ship. After a very rough start to the year, I believe they were 3-12. They rattled off 5 straight wins heading into Saturday. Nolan Arenado has hit 3 home runs in that span. Trevor Story has been doing a good job of being able to step up for this team, and then hitting that walk-off home run in the 12th a few days ago was Charlie Blackmon. That was his first of the year. You had to feel like they needed that. David Dahl has been able to do a good job of being able to get on base. Ryan McMahon getting back in the lineup is huge, but there still are question marks. Garrett Hampson and Ian Desmond hitting below 200, and then you just don't know what you're going to get from game to game out of the catcher spot as well with the Colorado Rockies. So I do think that Eichhoff is going to be able to deliver a quality start. I do think that John Gray is going to have a quality start, but I think that he surrenders like 3 runs in 6 innings to the Philadelphia Phillies, and I think the Phillies from there can win a 4-3 style game. I'm going to be on this total under, and I'm going to take the plus price with the Philadelphia Phillies. Both these plays already locked and loaded, so we are already dialed in on that one. 9-13, 9-14 on the betting rotation. The Cincinnati Reds are in San Diego to face off against the Padres. Joey Lucchesi on the bump for the Padres. Tyler Mahle goes for the Cincinnati Reds. Total in this game is 7.5, and it is shaded a little bit to the over. Over is between -110 and -115. The under is between -105 and -110. If you like the Padres, going to be laying anywhere between -135 and -140. Want to take a shot on the Reds, anywhere between +125 and +130. This is a spot where I do have to take a look at the San Diego Padres. The Cincinnati Reds seem to be igniting a little bit with their offense, but they just still aren't getting a lot going into Saturday's action. As a team, they just have not been hitting well. Their team batting average is $192. That is by far the worst in the bigs. I will say that they do have some guys that have some power. Dan Diedrich so far this year, 5 home runs. Joey Votto was able to hit a home run in this series, so that was obviously a very good sign for this team. But all in all, they're really feast or famine. They're hitting a bunch of solo home runs, and they're not getting anything else. They're just not able to get on base. Eugenio Suarez is hitting .230. Yasiel Puig below 200. Matt Kemp is right around the Mendoza line himself. Jesse Winkler hitting below 200. He's been able to hit some home runs. Jose Iglesias at the bottom of the lineup is actually one of their better hitters as he entered into Saturday at 227. Meanwhile, with the San Diego Padres, you've got guys that are doing a better job of being able to get on. Manny Machado was able to have a multi-hit game in their extra inning loss on Friday. Fernando Tatis Jr. at the top of the lineup, hitting nearly 300. He's been able to hit 5 home runs so far this year. Ian Kinsler and Fanmio Reyes both hitting below 200, but with Reyes, he's just been hitting it right at people. You got to feel like things are going to turn around for him. Austin Hedges has not necessarily been great with the bat, but Hunter Renfroe has been able to drive in some runs that he's been doing a good job of being able to hit the deep ball as well. And for Tatis Jr., he also has 6 home runs as well. Joey Lucchesi sometimes lends himself a little bit to too much hard contact. That's why his ERA is currently at 5.06, but pitching at Petco, I think, is going to be a very good sign for him. Currently, I think that the San Diego Padres should be able to win this game, but I think they only win this game by 1 run, so I'm going to see if the money line dips on this game to more around -125 or -130, but certainly going to be playing this game under, wanting to see if this under dips a little bit more just because I think that I'm seeing a little bit of steam here on the under just because I feel like the sharps like myself are realizing neither of these teams are hitting too well, and in the case of the Cincinnati Reds, hitting at all. So for that reason, going to be on the Padres in this spot and going to be on the under just in wait-and-see mode as to what numbers I'm going to get. 9:15, 9:16 on the betting rotation. It is the Baltimore Orioles playing host to the Minnesota Twins. Kyle Gibson on the pump for the Twins. Dylan Bundy on the hill for the Baltimore Orioles. Total in this game anywhere between 9.5 and 10. If you like the 9.5, the over is -115. The under is -105. If you like 10, under is -120. The over is even. If you want to take a shot on the Orioles, getting anywhere between +135 and +140. Want to lay it with the Twins, anywhere between -146 and -150. This is a case where you really have to take the over because with the doubleheader yesterday, both these teams had to dig deep into their bullpen, and you've got a pair of starters that so far this year have an ERA above 7. Dylan Bundy is absolutely awful. 0-2 this year, 7.79 ERA. He just can't get anything going. He actually had his best start of the year in his last start against the Tampa Bay Rays. I believe that he gave up 3 runs in 5 innings, which for him is pretty good before the year. 17.1 innings in 4 starts, has 9 walks, 22 strikeouts, which is good, but opponents hitting .270 off of him. Meanwhile, you take a look at Kyle Gibson. He has yet to factor into a decision, but he himself has a big-time issue with the free passes, and he doesn't necessarily get a lot of strikeouts himself. In 3 starts this year, 14.2 innings, 12 strikeouts, 8 walks. Opponents hitting .295 off of him. With the Baltimore Orioles, you've got a team that actually hits somewhat decent. They don't pitch well. Their bullpen stinks. The Minnesota Twins have a decent bullpen, but they got badly taxed yesterday as well. So I am all about the over in the spot, trying to see if 9.5 goes to more of a -110 juice, but I am on board there. And we've seen Eddie Rosario ripping the cover off the ball. These numbers are from yesterday because obviously we had the doubleheader and everything like that, so things haven't refreshed yet. But 8 home runs, 18 RBI, hitting just below 300. Jorge Polanco hitting .369 himself. Nelson Cruz was able to drive in some runs during that doubleheader. Whenever Jake Cave and Max Kepler are in the lineup, they seem to do a pretty solid job along with Byron Buxton. They have a lot of platoon players out there in the outfield, and all of them are able to hit. Marwin Gonzalez has not really been holding up his end of the bargain, but all in all, things have been going well for this team. Meanwhile, for the Baltimore Orioles, got like the fact that Jonathan VR does a good job of being able to get on at the top of the lineup. He's been struggling a little bit recently, but you got to think that things are going to pick up for him like that for Rio Ruiz. Rio Ruiz, for much of the year, was hitting right around 200. You felt like he was able to be able to get something going with the 2 hits that he got in game 1 of the doubleheader. You have to like that Renato Nunez was able to hit a home run during that doubleheader. Dwight Smith Jr. was also able to go deep. He's been hitting well for this team. And hey, Chris Davis hitting above 100 right now. So that's obviously a good sign, as I joke there. But all in all, I think that you've got 2 teams that are going to be able to rake in this game. But I think the Twins are just going to pound Dylan Bundy into the ground. And then with the bullpen of the Baltimore Orioles, you just don't really have too many redeeming qualities. I'm right now seeing a run line price out there with the Minnesota Twins of even juice. I'm trying to see if I'm going to be able to get a little bit of a plus price, but I'm going to be on that at some point, and I'm going to be on the over in this game as well. Currently in wait-and-see mode on those numbers, but I'm looking at Twins run line and the over here. 917, 918 on the betting rotation. The Yankees play host to the Kansas City Royals. Jorge Lopez goes for the Kansas City Royals. James Paxton for the New York Yankees. Total in this game is 8, and it is very even both ways. Minus 110 on the over, minus 110 on the under. While I'm late here with the Yankees, anywhere between minus 230 and minus 240. If you want to take a shot on the Royals, anywhere between plus $2 and plus 210. I just can't back Jorge Lopez, especially with the way that James Paxton was dealing a few days ago against the Red Sox. He had an 8-inning shutout. He had 12 strikeouts, if I remember correctly, in that contest. He only gave up 2 or 3 hits. He was absolutely sensational in that game. He had a couple rough outings to start out with the New York Yankees, but you got to really feel like he has found it with his team. Meanwhile, Lopez actually has a 4.30 ERA. That is not too bad, but something that he has a massive issue with is the free passes. 8 walks in 23 innings so far this year. He had 9 walks in 34 innings last year, and he lends himself to a little bit too much contact. Opponents hit 297 off of him last year. So far this year, it's been a little bit better, but man, 250 is what opponents are hitting off of him, and the Yankees right now are raking, despite the fact that they've got all those injuries with guys like Didi Gregorius, Troy Tulowitzki, Giancarlo Stanton, the list goes on and on, Gary Sanchez. They've been able to find some offense with DJ LeMahieu being able to hit over 300. Luke Voit has not really been hitting for average, but he's got 4 home runs and 15 RBIs so far this year. Gleyber Torres in a little bit of a funk right now, but Clint Frazier was able to have 3 hits in the game yesterday. You had Urshela at the third base spot get 3 hits, and he's now hitting above 300. Austin Romine was able to bust out for 2 hits, and it was just home run derby for this team yesterday as they were able to just completely steamroll the Kansas City Royals 9-2. The Royals had to go deep into their bullpen as they had to get 3 innings out of something called Glenn Sparkman. Yep, that is not good. But what I will say for the Kansas City Royals is that they're probably going to be able to get a couple runs themselves. Hunter Dozier hitting just below 300. He's got 5 home runs so far this year. Ryan O'Hearn is able to deliver some power despite the fact that he hits below 200. Jorge Soler barely hitting above the Mendoza line along with Lucas Suda, but both these guys have the ability to go deep. And then Whit Merrifield and Mondesi at the top of the lineup have been doing a good job being able to get on base along with Alex Gordon, who's hitting above 300. On base percentage right around 400. So I do think the Royals are going to be able to scratch off a couple runs, but I think the Yankees are going to be able to hit Lopez, and they're going to be able to hit Lopez hard, and I think that they're going to be able to roll up the runs once again, much like yesterday. I'm in wait-and-see mode on a run line price on this game. Currently, I'm seeing Yankees minus 120. Want to see if I can lay a little bit of better juice, more around minus 110, and I'm going to be on this total over. Right now, in wait-and-see mode on the over because I think it's really weird that the opening total was 8.5, and it was immediately steamed down, so just waiting to see what all the hubbub on that is about, but going to be on the Yankees run line and going to be on this total over. Game 919, 920 on the betting rotation. It is the Detroit Tigers playing host to the Chicago White Sox. Daniel Norris takes the bump for the Detroit Tigers. Meanwhile, for the Chicago White Sox, it is Reynaldo Lopez. The total on this game is 9.5 and is shaded slightly to the under. Under is anywhere between minus 110 and minus 115. Over is anywhere between minus 105 and minus 110. If you want to take a shot here on the White Sox, going to get anywhere between plus 113 and plus 116. If you like the Tigers, anywhere between minus 123 and minus 126 is what you're laying. And these are 2 pitchers that aren't necessarily too bad. I do like what I've seen out of Lopez. They were supposed to start Irvin Santana yesterday. Thank goodness gracious, it is going to be Reynaldo Lopez instead because Irvin Santana, he's not good. He's not good at all. I will say that Reynaldo Lopez, not necessarily the pitcher that you want to be banking on for the entire year as he enters into this game with a nice 8.84 ERA, but he does get some strikeouts. I will give him that. 17 so far this year in 19 and a third innings. He gives up the free passes as well, 14 walks in 19 and one-third innings. Not necessarily a redeeming quality, but what else are you going to get out of Daniel Norris as well? Daniel Norris heads into this game making his first start of the year. He currently has a 4.32 ERA, so he's been very decent in that regard, but he's essentially been a long reliever this year that has allowed opponents to hit 324 off of him. Last year he saw a couple starts as well, and well, it didn't necessarily go well as he had an 0-5 record, 5.68 ERA, 19 walks in 44 and a third innings. Opponents hit 261 off of him, and yet he's a minus 125 favorite in this spot. I just have to go with the Chicago White Sox because they've got the much better bats in this spot. Detroit as a team hitting just 215 with 10 home runs in 19 games. I believe that is the lowest mark in the majors in regards to home runs, and that's despite the fact that they had 3 on Friday. Their game yesterday obviously got rained out, but I like what Yohan Moncada brings to the table. He, for the White Sox this year, hitting 321, 6 home runs, 18 RBI. We know that Jose Abreu is struggling. He's hitting below 200. Daniel Palka and Adam Engel have been struggling out there in the outfield as well, but you gotta like what Tim Anderson is doing. He's hitting above 400 for the squad. He has been absolutely sensational. Eloy Jimenez, who got signed to that contract before the season, has been a little bit up and down this year, but he's been able to do a very good job of being able to ride with the tide, and he's able to deliver some power out there in the middle of the lineup as well. And then for the Detroit Tigers, they've got a lot of guys that aren't necessarily doing a great job of getting on base. Jacoby Jones, Peterson, and Josh Harrison all head into this game hitting below 180. Nick Castellanos and Miguel Cabrera seem to be picking it up. You got to think at some point Nico Goodrum is going to get some better luck. He was able to hit his second home run of the year in the 9th inning on Friday. You got to think the more are coming his way, but Jose Candelario has really struggled himself with a batting average of 224. I think that this is very ideal for Lopez to be able to come in and have a quality start, and we've noticed that the White Sox bullpen has actually looked much, much better the last week as well. So for that reason, going to be taking the plus price here with the Chicago White Sox, and I'm going to be taking this total under. I've already locked in the under. Currently in wait-and-see mode as to exactly what price I'm going to be getting on the Chicago White Sox. 921, 922 on the betting rotation. We've got the Boston Red Sox in Tampa Bay to face off against the Rays. Tyler Glasnow going on the bump for the Rays. David Price for the Boston Red Sox. Total in this game is 7.5 shaded over. Over is anywhere between minus 115 and minus 120. Under anywhere between even juice and minus 105. If you like the Rays, you're going to be getting anywhere between minus 125 and minus 115. Meanwhile, if you want to take a shot here on the Red Sox, that's anywhere between plus 105 and plus 115. There's only one guy in regards to a pitcher that I can trust at this point for the Red Sox, as at least in regards to a starter, and that is David Price. He looked very good in his last outing. Now, it was against the Baltimore Orioles, but he was able to deliver some strong innings. He has a whip below 1 so far this year. He's been limiting the walks. I really do like the outlook for him. And Tyler Glasnow has been lights out himself. 4-0, 1.13 ERA, 24 innings, 24 strikeouts. Opponents hitting 205 off of him, but I feel like the Boston Red Sox have finally found something. They've put up 5+ runs in each of the last 2 games after getting swept by the New York Yankees. They were able to get off to a great start yesterday as they were able to get that grand slam from Andrew Benintendi. He got off to a little bit of a rough start this year. He's righted the ship. Mookie Betts was able to have a multi-hit game yesterday. That was big from him. They're not getting anything out of Sandy Leon at the catcher spot or Lynn at the second base spot, but Rafael Devers is picking up his average. Xander Bogaerts has been good. JD Martinez is hitting right around 350. Mitch Moreland hasn't necessarily been doing a great job of hitting for contact, but he's been able to hit for some power. And then for the Tampa Bay Rays, their bullpen has actually been letting them down a little bit. Charlie Morton wound up giving up 5 runs in 6 innings yesterday, so that was a little bit unexpected for them. The bullpen in general has been not as good as it was. Diego Castillo has been giving up some runs, guys like that, just not stepping up the way that you'd expect them to. Austin Meadows at the top of the lineup, though, has been terrific, hitting nearly 350 so far this year. He's been able to deliver some power for the year. He's got 6 home runs, 17 RBI. You also have to like the fact that Brandon Lowe hitting nearly 300 for this team. You've got G-Man Choi out there in the middle of the lineup who does a very good job of being able to get on base. And then Kevin Kiermaier has been really a big turnaround from last year. He was hitting below 200 last year. This year, he's hitting nearly 300, and he's been able to deliver some long balls as well. The catcher spot with Perez and Zunino has been a little bit of an issue for this team, but they are also able to get a little bit of contact out of Avisail Garcia, whenever he DHs, he's hitting above 300 so far this year. He's got a trio of dingers, and Yandy Diaz has also been a nice find for this team. So I do think that we're going to see quite a few runs in this game. This is a total in which I'm going to take over at the 7.5, and I've already locked that one in. I think the Red Sox have finally refound their form. I think that they're going to be motivated to be able to get the series win over the Tampa Bay Rays. So I think that taking the plus price here is exactly what you need to do, just because David Price is by far their most trustworthy starter at this point for a Red Sox team that, let's face it, they don't necessarily have the best relief pitching themselves. So for that reason, I am on the Red Sox, and I'm going to be taking this total over. Both these plays all locked in. 9:23, 9:24 on the betting rotation. We've got the Houston Astros in Texas to face off against the Rangers. Shelby Miller on the bump for the Texas Rangers. Colin McHugh goes for the Houston Astros. Total in this game is 10.5, and it is shaded under. If you like the under, it is anywhere between minus 115 and minus 120. The over is anywhere between even juice and minus 105. There is 110 out there. That 10 has an over of minus 120, and the under is even. And if you want to lay it here with the Houston Astros, you could be laying anywhere between minus $2 and minus 210. Meanwhile, if you want to take a shot on the Rangers, anywhere between plus 180 and plus 190. We all know by this point that good old Shelby Miller is on my fade list, and for very good reason. And he's going against a pitcher in Colin McHugh that I actually really like. Colin McHugh for the year for the Houston Astros has been terrific. 3-1, 1.96 ERA, a whip of a .83. He does a great job of being able to get strikeouts. Shelby Miller, he can't get outs in general. So far this year, in his 3 starts, he has went a grand total of 10 innings with 3 strikeouts, 11 walks, a 9 ERA. Opponents are hitting .364 off of him. And he pitches in Arlington, a place in which really lends itself to runs. You have to be taking a look at the Houston Astros run line. I mean, just take a look up and down the lineup. Going into Saturday, Jose Altuve had been doing great. 8 home runs, 16 RBI, hitting above 300. Alex Bregman has been doing a terrific job for this team. He's hitting just below 300. He's been a real spark plug out there after a little bit of a slow start. Michael Brantley has picked it up after a slow start. He's hitting nearly 300. Carlos Correa has been a little bit cold recently, but you still got Yuri Gurriel. Jake Marisnik has done a great job with the bat. Josh Reddick. You've got a list of guys that goes on and on. And then for the Texas Rangers, you've got a lot of feast or famine bats out there with guys like Noah Mazzara, Joey Gallo, Asdrubal Cabrera, who all do a good job of being able to hit for power, but they don't necessarily do a great job of being able to get on base. Jelino DeShields Jr. has great speed, but he doesn't do the best job of being able to get on base himself. You do have Shin-Soo Choo, who I really like. He does a great job of just finding a way on base. He's hitting over 300 so far this year. And Danny Santana has actually been a nice find. He was able to get his first home run of the year a couple days ago, so that's obviously been good. And then you know what you're going to get out of Elvis Andrus. Has great power, hits over 350, so that is absolutely terrific. But I think the Astros are just going to lay it on Shelby Miller. I think they're going to get to him early. I think that Colin McHugh going to have another great start, and this Houston Astros bullpen is very good in backing him up. I'm looking at the under at 10.5 runs, trying to see if I'm going to get a little bit more favorable juice there, and I'm going to be on the Astros run line. Currently, the Astros run line price is minus 130. Obviously, that's a little bit hefty, so I'm going to try to see if this tips down to more around a minus 120 before I fire on it, but going to be on Astros run line and going to be on this total under. We move on to 9:25, 9:26 on the betting rotation. The Toronto Blue Jays are out there in Oakland to face off against the A's. Brett Anderson on the bump for the A's. Aaron Sanchez goes for the Toronto Blue Jays. Total in this game is 8.5, and it is shaded under. The under is minus 120. The over is even juice. If you want to take a shot on the Blue Jays, you're going to be getting anywhere between plus 145 and plus 153. If you like the A's, you're going to be laying anywhere between minus 155 and minus 166. This is a spot where I've once again got to take a shot here on the Toronto Blue Jays. They take the first 2 games of the series, and they just absolutely dominated yesterday by kind of 10-1. This is a team that it seems like are really starting to get things going with the bats, and they've got some very good pitching. Aaron Sanchez, not necessarily the Mona Lisa Vito of starting pitching, but at the same time, he's been doing a pretty good job for this team. He's 2-1 so far this year with a 2.86 ERA. Now, the walks are a little bit of an issue. He sometimes gets himself into massive trouble. We saw that in his start against the Boston Red Sox, and we saw it last year. He had 58 walks in 105 innings. So far this year, 13 walks in 22 innings, but opponents hitting just 215 off of him. Does a very good job of being able to not get taken deep, which is obviously a little bit of an issue because Oakland plays much different during the day than during the night. They've got the whole marine layer thing. I was enlightened on this thanks to you guys on Twitter because I got a C- in weather and climate, so I had no idea what it was called a couple days ago. But with that said, I do think that the A's are also going to get a quality performance out of Brett Anderson. Through 4 starts so far this year, he's been terrific. He doesn't have great swing and miss stuff, 14 strikeouts in 24 innings, but he's got an ERA of 2.63. Opponents hitting 222 off of him. Does a very good job of being able to locate his pitches. 9 walks in 24 innings. Not bad, at the same time not great, but I do think that the Toronto Blue Jays really starting to pick it up with the bats. Justin Smoak was able to hit a home run yesterday, his 4th. He now has 15 RBI on the year. Freddie Galvis has been doing a great job for this team. He's got 5 home runs. He's hitting above 300. We also noticed that Randall Grichuk has really been getting things going with the bat. He was 0-5 yesterday, but you got to think that he's going to be able to do something. And Eric Sogard at the top of the lineup, hitting above 400 ever since he's been picked up by the team. Brandon Drury also has a home run in back-to-back games now, and Rowdy Tellez was able to finally get a home run. That was his 4th of the year. He's now hitting 231. Things seem to be really ticking upward for this Toronto Blue Jays offense. And then for the A's, their offense has actually been a little bit sputtering lately. Matt Chapman was able to get 2 hits yesterday. He's hitting above 300. Marcus Semien is hitting 300 at the top of the lineup as well. But Steven Piscotty, despite the 2 hits that he got yesterday, struggling a little bit. Chris Davis has 10 home runs, but he's only hitting for average 238. Chad Pinder seems to be coming back to earth a little bit. Kendrys Morales hitting below 200, and Jurickson Profar also hitting below 200, and then Loreno out there in the center field spot, not delivering much with the bat as well. This is a spot where I do think that Sanchez is going to be able to deliver a quality start. I do also really like the bullpen of the Toronto Blue Jays. 120 juice is just too much to lay on the under, so I'm right now in wait-and-see mode there. Currently, I'm wait-and-see mode on the Blue Jays because when I first started doing this broadcast, they were at plus 145. They're already up to plus 153. Just trying to see what number I'm going to be able to get on the Blue Jays, but I'm all about the Blue Jays and the under in this spot. 927, 928 on the betting rotation. It is the Seattle Mariners in Los Angeles to face off against the Angels. Jamie Barria goes for the LA Angels. Mike Leake for the Seattle Mariners. Total in this game is 9.5, and it is very even across the board. Minus 110 on the over, minus 110 on the under. The Mariners are a slight underdog. You're going to get anywhere between even money and plus 105 on them. Meanwhile, the Angels are a slight favorite, anywhere between minus 110 and minus 115. I just cannot believe that Mike Leake continues to get disrespected the way that he does, game in and game out. He's not a great pitcher, but he was actually one of the more profitable ones out there in the big leagues last year, and he's been doing a pretty good job so far this year. He's not going to go out there, and he's not going to give you necessarily 8 innings of no-hit baseball or anything like that, but he does a good job of being able to limit things. He has only 4 walks in 23 1/3 innings. Now, I know that opponents are hitting 299 off of him. That's not necessarily great, but it's not like the ballpark out there in Los Angeles is one that's necessarily having balls fly out left, right, and sideways. He also does a very good job of just being able to strand men on base. His ERA currently at 3.86. I like what he's able to do. And then Barria for the LA Angels, not necessarily a bad starter, but what are you really going to be able to get out of him? So far this year, 1-1 with a 5.87 ERA. He wound up getting 26 starts last year, and he had a little bit of an issue with the free passes, 47 in 129 1/3 innings. He does a good job of being able to limit some of the hard contact, but so far this year, what we've noticed from him is that he is allowing guys to get too many hits. Opponents are hitting 323 off of him so far this year. And with the LA Angels, you don't have a lot of guys that are hitting. Mike Trout is the offense so far this year. He's hitting 340 with 6 home runs. Albert Pujols is not what he once was. I will say that Brandon Goodwin and Daniel Fletcher have really been stepping up in the lineup. Both these guys hitting nearly 300, so they've been some plus guys, but you take a look at some of these struggling bats. Justin Bour is finally hitting above 200. Cole Calhoun below the Mendoza line right now. Tommy La Stella 226. Zach Cozart and Peter Borges are both hitting below 100 going into Saturday. Jonathan Lucroy has been a decent bat for them, and Andrelton Simmons seems to be getting something going, but with the Seattle Mariners, you've just got a murderer's row of hitters. Edwin Encarnacion, Daniel Vogelbach, Jay Bruce, Tim Beckham, Omar Tavares, Ryan Healy, all these guys are able to go deep. Mitch Haniger does a great job of being able to hit for power and for contact. Malik Smith has not necessarily been doing a great job at the top of the lineup, but you've also got D. Gordon at the bottom of it, who does a great job with his speed and being able to get on base. This is a spot where I've got to take a look at the Mariners and got to take that plus price, and I'm going to be taking this total under. Currently in wait-and-see mode as to what price I'm going to be able to get on the Seattle Mariners, just because I noticed that a little bit more steam has been coming in on the LA Angels, but have already locked in the under of 9.5 runs in this one as we wrap things up with 9:29, 9:30 on the betting rotation. The Cleveland Indians are playing host to the Atlanta Braves. Max Fried goes on the bump for the Braves. Meanwhile, Shane Bieber fever for the Indians. Total in this game is 7.5, and it is shaded over. The over is minus 120. The under is even. If you want to take a shot here on the Indians, you're going to be laying anywhere between minus 118 and minus 127. This number is moving like crazy. Meanwhile, if you want to take a shot on the Atlanta Braves, going to get anywhere between plus 110 and plus 117. This is a spot where I do have to take a look at the Cleveland Indians, and I've actually already taken them on the run line. I got a run line price of plus 170. I'm seeing more plus 155s and plus 160s out there, but I still advise a take right here. I think that the Indians should be able to get to Max Fried, who has been off to a very good start so far this year in regards to his record and his ERA. He's 2-0 with a .92 ERA. He has been off to an absolutely terrific start, but he's not going to be able to go 7 or 8 innings in this game, in my opinion. And what we know about the Atlanta Braves, they've got one of the worst bullpens out there in the big leagues. Fried has done a good job of being able to limit the walks, 4 walks in 19 2/3 innings. Opponents are hitting just 188 off of them. But with the Cleveland Indians, you've now got the big bomber bats that are coming back into the lineup. Francisco Lindor wound up coming back for this team yesterday. That is beyond huge. Jose Ramirez is still hitting below 200. Hanley Ramirez has not necessarily been getting the job done for the team whenever he's been in the lineup, but Leonis Martin, towards the top of the lineup, has been able to do a good job of being able to get on base. His on-base percentage is above 350, so you got like that. Carlos Santana hitting nearly 400. You now have Carlos Gonzalez to be able to rely upon as well, and Jason Kipnis has been making his appearances as well, so that's obviously huge for this team. And Taylor Naquin out there in the outfield does a good job of being able to hit as well. With the Atlanta Braves, you got a bunch of guys that are doing a great job of being able to hit as well. Ronald Acuna Jr. and Ozzie Albies, 2 stars in the making. Nick Markakis hitting above 300. Dansby Swanson all year long has been getting the job done. Going into Saturday, he had 18 RBI, hitting right around 250, so he's a very good bottom of the lineup guy. But with the Cleveland Indians, you've also got a solid pitcher in Shane Bieber that's going to be backed up by one of the best bullpens out there in the big leagues. I know that the bullpen of the Indians sometimes can be a little bit shaky, but all in all, they've got some good arms out there with guys like Clymer and Brad Hand and company. And for the year, Shane Bieber in 3 starts has won 21 innings, 171 ERA, 6 walks in 21 innings. He actually has been doing a better job with the strikeouts as well, 22 and 21 innings, and opponents hitting just 147 off of him. I think that the Braves are going to be able to hit him a little bit better than the past opponents, so for that reason, I'm taking a look at the over. Minus 120 juice, just a little bit too much juice to be laying on the over, so currently in wait-and-see mode there, but I've already locked in that Indians run line at plus 170, and that will do it for the Easter edition of MLB Overtime Betting. A big thanks to Danny Knobler for joining me in the last segment, and if you like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher. If you ever have a question for the podcast you'd like answered, tweet it in at gunit_D1, and I'd be more than happy to address it. And let's make today a wonderful Easter that is full of non-rotten eggs and a bunch of winning tickets. Thank you so much for tuning in.